Today's topic 9/11 and what really happened from multiple perspectives. All right, welcome to Plants vs. Zombies with commentary. Today I'm going to be talking about 9/11 and all of the conspiracy theories, at least most of the conspiracy theories that are associated with it. All right, so first of all, we need to get a baseline. What are we working with here? What's the established narrative? So four planes, and these were all Boeings. These were all big commercial airliners, right? They departed from three of them from New England, and one of them from New Jersey. Two planes hit the World Trade Centers, right? First was the North Tower, then the South Tower, and then one hit the Pentagon, and then one crashed in a field on its way to either the White House or the Capitol. Four passports were found with links to Al Qaeda, but one of them was found like at the crash site itself, like very, very close to it. And then the opposition says, and this is various sources, right? Various sources. Not everybody agrees with everything. There's a lot of overlap, but not everybody agrees with everything. So yes, four planes did depart from those areas. However, some people say only one plane hit, citing videos that say the people on the ground at the crash site didn't see a second plane, right? And this is further supported when you look at squibs that came off of the building, and it's pretty undeniable. I just recently watched a I believe it was National Geographic, one of their videos on 9/11, and it did show pretty clearly that there was a squib that came off one of the buildings. And in a few other clips, you can see similar things. At least it appears that way, that squibs were coming off the building. And if you don't know what a squib is, it's a jet of smoke that comes out of the side of a building. And these are found in controlled demolitions, right? And so a lot of people claim that the squibs found in 9/11 on the Twin Towers matched that of a controlled demolition, right? And then they also say that the manner in which the towers fell was very much controlled demolition, as well as World Trade Center 7. Um, so you look at the opposition, they said one plane, maybe two, hit the World Trade Center, right? Some people deny that there was even a second plane. And then the plane that hit the Pentagon, if you look at it now, it was one frame per second, right? So it was like some of the worst quality videos ever produced. But the government of the US did apparently um, declassify this video footage from pillars at the Pentagon. And if you line up the footage, or if you don't, you can look at each individual pillar. They don't show the plane hitting the Pentagon, right? So a lot of people say that it was suspicious. Also, there was a broadcast from Donald Rumsfeld, I believe his name is, the day prior to 9/11, and he said that they were investigating some missing funds, and apparently that part of the Pentagon that the plane hit or didn't hit, or well, it just fell down, maybe on its own. Maybe there were bombs planted, who knows, right? Apparently that was the area of the Pentagon where they were investigating that. Um, and then yes, World Trade Center 7, it fell on its own, right? That's undeniable. It fell on its own. Um, it was also very much a controlled demolition style of falling. Um, so some people say, it was bombs. Somebody went into the World Trade Center 7, it was bombs. However, the news, and this is specifically BBC, they were saying that it was because the World Trade Centers, the Twin Towers, they had fallen down, and that had caused structural instability in World Trade Center 7, right? So That's also known as a Solomon Brothers building. Salomon. So not Solomon, Salomon. Um, or just a Salomon building. Yeah, that's it's kind of a hard sell for conspiracy theorists, but for the BBC at the time, that was not a hard sell. Also, what wasn't a hard sell for BBC at the time was the fact that the World Trade Center 7 was still up at the time of them broadcasting um, uh, how it fell down. They were talking about how it fell down, and um, they were avoidant of details apparently. And now this is multiple layers of sources. Apparently, they got their information from Reuters, um, and that had led them to say that World Trade Center 7 had fallen down. Of course, BBC is a British corporation, so if they're not experts on the skyline of New York, okay, they kind of make sense. But at the same time, right, like look with your eyes, that kind of thing. Um, so people found that suspicious, and there is a good argument to be made there because they were talking about World Trade Center 7 as if it had fallen down, right? The reporter was avoidant of details, but they were saying, oh, like first responders are on the scene, and it's just like, how do you know that though? Like you're not there. You can't see that happening. Who gave you that information? Right? And if it was Reuters that gave them that information, how does Reuters know in advance? Right? So, if you're really a conspiracy theorist, you might say, "Oh, that's time travel," right? But most people that have spoken on that topic would say, "Yeah, they knew it was going to happen." Right? Somebody leaked that information, and they wanted to get that early broadcast in. I don't know why. Maybe they intended to edit that out. It's very strange. No matter what the situation is, the way I see it, there are two feasible options. Either BBC is stupid and they got unreliable information and they just spewed that out like a bunch of idiots, or they knew it was going to fall down and they wanted to do a pre-broadcast and they wanted to edit that out, but they made the mistake of not editing that out. The building, which was in frame of the broadcast. Yes. Also, the to dispute the claim of the World Trade Center 7 falling down due to structural issues caused by the Twin Towers falling, right? World Trade Center 7 was like a full building away, right? It was not right next to the Twin Towers. It was a full building away, right? So there was definitely some space there, and it would also make you wonder, okay, if World Trade Center 7 fell down, why wouldn't other buildings fall down? It's very weird. Also adding to the conspiracy theory side of things, you had the passports, right? And I don't know if you've seen this meme or not, but there's this meme called Passport Man, right? And it's, kind of jabbing at the idea that the US found these passports, or at least some of them. They're jabbing at the US and how, apparently these passports can survive, some major collapse of a building and, not get covered by debris, not burned by the jet fuel that burned the steel beams in the World Trade Centers, right? Um, it's it's just jabbing at that. The passports, quite honestly, I don't know how they survived. Right, it doesn't really make sense. But that's where the passport man meme comes from. Anyways, yes. Continuing on, five dancing Israelis. The five dancing Israelis. I should talk about that. The government doesn't really say anything about that. Um, So a woman was watching with her binoculars, right, from an adjacent building. So it was maybe not directly adjacent, but it was far enough away to see dancing Israelis, five dancing men. All of them were Israeli. Two of them had ties to Mossad, which is Israeli intelligence, right? She saw those five men dancing, right, and celebrating the fall of the Twin Towers. The woman who saw them found them suspicious. She called the police. The police they came over and they arrested them, and they realized that they were tied to a company whose warehouses apparently had been, cleaned out in a rush. People had left in a rush. It seemed to be a sort of like facade, a sort of shell corporation. It is very suspicious, right? Why were they on a rooftop? Why were they watching 9/11? And most importantly, why were they celebrating, right? Because that's a strange part. Why were they celebrating? Because that's, obviously a horrible tragedy, right? You have two options. Either they knew it was going to happen and they're, hooting and hollering, whoopee, we had a great success here today. Or they're just psychopaths, right? Because who celebrates something like that, right? You'd have to be pretty sick in the head to do that, right? So that's the theory, and it deepens when you look at Larry Silverstein, who apparently was very very adamant about being at work in the World Trade Center. Right, he showed up every single day except that day. Right, and if you look at an interview he did, he was very suspicious in that interview. I can't lie. Just being objective here, um, his answer for why he was not there that day was, well, I was at home, right? And apparently he had a doctor's appointment that day, right? That his wife had scheduled for him, and that is why he was there at home, not at work. And then he was set to go to, I believe it was a dermatology appointment. Anyways, yes, very suspicious. And then you look at, okay, why? Why do conspiracy theorists say, you know, the Israelis had something to do with this? What is their possible motive, right? Uh, if you look at, kind of a lower layer of conspiracy theorists, they'll say, well, it's not the Israelis, but it was the American government, right? They wanted to invade the Middle East. They wanted oil. They wanted power, maybe. That's what they wanted. But if you look a little bit deeper, right, a lot of people say, well, it wasn't just the American government, it was actually the Israeli government. That's what they wanted, right? They wanted to knock down the trade centers, the World Trade Centers, and they wanted to blame it on Al Qaeda, right? So they could go invade, the Middle East, and they could grab oil from there and destabilize the Middle East because it was becoming too powerful, right? That's the kind of the main argument. Now, that seems kind of a bit of a stretch, but then when you look at APAC, AIPAC, which is a foreign lobby group, but they're not registered as a foreign lobby group. They're a foreign lobby group in the US, and they pay money to American politicians, right? There's actually an Instagram account called Track APAC, and that shows you how much money each um, member of the U.S. government has taken from APAC, right? Some notable people: Kamala Harris, and then Donald Trump. There was even one guy who received $7, which is kind of strange. Um, it's kind of actually funny. $7, from APAC. You're really feeling influenced after $7. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. But you look at the U.S. striking Iran, right, and their supposed nuclear facilities. It's not confirmed, right? It's very much a gray area whether they actually have nuclear facilities or whether they actually had a nuclear facility in Fordo, which was a bunker in a mountain. Um, and apparently, the only people in the world that could possibly destroy it would be the US because they have this bunker buster bomb. They attacked Fordo, as well as two other locations, I believe, in Iran. Um, Now, Iran, to our best knowledge in the West, they don't they don't have any nuclear facilities, and their closest to a nuclear facility that they have, that's destroyed. Right, that's destroyed. So they can't possibly build nukes, pretty much. Um, Now, some people will say, well, it's because the U.S. has all these highly advanced um, pieces of weaponry that Israel wants to use them, right? Some people will say it's an alliance. Some people will say Israel is using America. Can argue about that any day of the week. What is true is that the U.S. did attack Fordo as well as two other facilities in Iran, and Iran responded by attacking American facilities. I believe the facilities that they attacked, I think some of them were in Syria, but I've also heard Jordan and Kuwait be mentioned, U.S. bases in those areas. Since then, the U.S. has backed out of the war pretty much. Um, After their Iron Dome failed, U.S. ships and Jordanian anti-air, working together, as well as Israel working together to stop missiles from Iran attacking Israel. Right now, missiles did breach that Iron Dome, and that really surprised the Israelis. There's even a song made about this called "Boom Boom Tel Aviv," which is actually pretty good, objectively. So that's 9/11 for you. That was a very brief overview. I didn't go too far into details there, but I want to know. I want to know, what is your opinion on 9/11? Who do you think did it? Was it an inside job? If it was an inside job, do you think it was the Israelis? Or perhaps do you think it was not an inside job, but you do think it was the Israelis? Or do you think it's Al Qaeda? Let me know in the comment section. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time with more conspiracy theory type of content.